At the peak of her struggle, Cynthia, pregnant, exhausted, and driving through the dangerous streets of Anambra, faces a night that threatens to break everything she's been fighting for. But just when the city seems determined to swallow her, a powerful client quietly watching her resilience makes a decision that could change her entire life. The moment he reveals what he really wants from her sends Cynthia into a spiral of fear, hope, and disbelief. And in that split second, she realizes she's standing on the thin line between losing everything and stepping into a future she never imagined. The hospital was too quiet. Cynthia hated quiet because it meant she could hear her own fears. The machines around Kelechi beeped softly, keeping rhythm with the weak rise and fall of his chest. He looked smaller in that bed, thinner than a man who used to lift Ozioma onto his shoulders after a long day of driving. She touched her swollen belly, the baby kicking lightly as if to remind her of the future she was trying not to think about. Bills lay scattered in her handbag like silent accusations. Rent overdue, school fees, medication that the doctor said couldn't wait. Every paper screamed the same truth. They had nothing left. Cynthia felt her throat tighten as she stared at her husband. The man who had driven day and night, carrying strangers across the city just to keep food on the table, was now too weak to stand. That night, alone on the hospital bench, she made a decision. Not because she wanted to, but because no one else could. If Kelechi can't drive, then I will, she whispered into the shadows. Her voice trembled, but her chest burned with something fierce. The next morning, as the city of Akka roared awake with kiki horns and market shouts, Cynthia slipped into Kelechi's old polo shirt. It smelled faintly of engine oil and sweat, the smell of survival. She placed her hands on the steering wheel of his Toyota Corolla, her palms damp. She had never imagined herself here, not like this. But survival doesn't wait for permission. The ride-hailing app pinged. A request flashed on her screen. Her heart raced. It was happening. She was about to carry strangers, just like Kelechi had done for years. She whispered under her breath, just one ride at a time. The baby kicked again, and she took it as a sign. This was no longer about choice. It was about war, against hunger, against fear, against the silence of hospital machines. And Cynthia was stepping into battle. The first ride felt like a lifetime squeezed into 20 minutes. The passenger, a middle-aged businessman with a heavy briefcase, stopped in his tracks when he saw her behind the wheel. A woman? At this hour, he muttered. His tone wasn't curious. It was dismissive. Cynthia forced a polite smile. Good morning, sir, please come in. He sighed, reluctantly, sliding into the back seat. As she pulled out of the street, her hands trembled. The city blurred in her vision, buses honking, traders shouting, motorcyclists weaving dangerously close. She gripped the wheel tighter. Every glance from the rearview mirror felt like judgment. Halfway through the ride, the man leaned forward. You shouldn't be doing this. Women, especially like you. His eyes darted to her belly. The words burned. She wanted to scream that hunger didn't care if she was a man or a woman, that hospital bills didn't wait. But instead, she kept her eyes on the road, steady and silent. When they finally reached his office, he hesitated before leaving. His face softened. You drive well. Be careful out there. He slipped out, leaving a 5-star rating on her phone. Cynthia exhaled for the first time in minutes, her chest rising like she had just finished a marathon. That evening, she sat in the car, staring at the ride-hailing app. One ride done, more waiting. Her back ached, her feet swollen, but her spirit sparked with a strange fire. She had proven she could do it, at least once. The fear was still there, but fear had not won. She looked at the hospital receipt tucked into her purse. More rides meant more payments. More payments meant Kelechi's medicine. She pressed accept on the next request, whispering to herself, if I stop now, we lose. If I keep going, maybe we win. The night air was heavy with the smell of fried plantain from a roadside stand. The city buzzed with danger and opportunity. For the first time, Cynthia wasn't just surviving it. She was moving through it, one ride at a time. The city of Akka was unforgiving at night. Neon lights flickered on dusty streets. Motorcycles cut across lanes recklessly, and Cynthia's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Her third passenger that evening was a man reeking of alcohol, his shirt half unbuttoned. "Fine woman like you. What are you doing here?" he slurred, leaning too close. Cynthia's chest tightened. She wanted to tell him to sit back, to respect her space, but she also feared angering him. Her unborn child shifted inside her, as if sensing the danger. She focused on the road, silently counting the minutes until his stop. Every time the man chuckled, her stomach knotted. His hand brushed the seat near her armrest, and she almost swerved. Finally, she pulled up at his destination. He staggered out, muttering, "Strong woman. You'll need it." Then he was gone, swallowed by the shadows of the street. Cynthia sat in the car, hands shaking. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She thought of her husband lying in the hospital bed, of Oziomo waiting at home. "I can't brake," she whispered to herself. She restarted the car, wiping her face with the sleeve of husband's polo shirt. That night, when she finally parked at home, her body ached from exhaustion. Her mother met her at the door, frowning at her swollen feet. "This is madness, Cynthia. You'll harm yourself, and the baby too." Cynthia's voice cracked, but her words were steel. "Mama, if I stop, who will pay for his medicine? Who will keep this family alive?" Silence. Heavy, bitter silence. She walked past, heading to bed, her daughter's small arms wrapping around her waist. For the first time, Cynthia realized she was no longer just Kalechi's wife. She was the only shield between her family and disaster. And shields don't get to rest. The rain fell hard that night, blurring the windshield, drumming against the roof of the Corolla. Cynthia squinted through the downpour, following the blinking GPS arrow. She pulled up to a dark street corner where a hooded young man slid into the back seat. "Good evening," she said, forcing calm into her voice. The man said nothing, only gave her an address in hushed tones. The air felt heavy, like danger riding shotgun. Her heartbeat echoed louder than the wipers. Halfway to the destination, he leaned forward suddenly. "Madam, stop here." Her pulse spiked. The area was deserted, streetlights broken. Every instinct screamed at her to drive faster, to get away. Slowly, she eased the car to a stop. The man pulled his hood tighter and stepped out into the rain. Just before he left, he leaned back in, slipping something onto the dashboard. "For the courage," he murmured, then vanished into the downpour. Cynthia's breath hitched. Hands trembling, she unfolded the note, 5,000 naira. Her chest tightened. She stared into the rain, tears mixing with the storm outside. For the first time in weeks, she felt more than just struggle. She felt seen. The city was still dangerous. The road was still cruel. But in that small gesture, she discovered a truth. Not everyone who entered her car came to break her. Some came to remind her she was not invisible. She gripped the steering wheel again, strength surging through her veins. One ride at a time, she whispered, the baby kicking in agreement. Word began to spread. At first, it was whispers between passengers. "There's a woman who drives around Akka, belly full of child, never afraid." Then came the students, curious and bold, asking for selfies. They posted her photos online, captions like "Fearless Mama Driver." Not everyone admired her. Some men laughed outright. "You think this city is safe for women?" One jeered. Another shook his head, refusing to enter when he saw her behind the wheel. "I'll wait for a real driver," he sneered, slamming the door. Cynthia swallowed the sting. Each insult cut, but each 5-star rating stitched her wounds. Her rating climbed on the app. Passengers who did ride with her often left amazed. One evening, an elderly woman climbed into the car, her wrapper neatly tied. She studied Cynthia for a moment before saying softly, "My daughter, I've heard of you. May strength never leave you." Cynthia almost broke down. Her eyes blurred, but she smiled through it, murmuring, Amen. The old woman left her with more than a fare. She left her with courage. That night, as Cynthia parked the car, exhaustion weighed her down, but her spirit lifted. Every insult, every cheer, every whispered blessing was shaping her. She wasn't just fighting hunger anymore. She was building a name. And in Akka, a city that rarely remembers the small, Cynthia was becoming unforgettable. The city tested her daily. Some nights it was drunken passengers, other times reckless drivers cutting too close. But the worst came one night outside a fuel station. 3 men approached as she waited for a ride request. They circled the car, laughing, pretending to scroll on their phones. One leaned down, peering through the window. "Fine car. Fine woman. Where's the husband?" Fear gripped her throat. Her phone buzzed with a real ride request just then. Without thinking, she rolled the windows up and slammed the gear into drive. The car lurched forward, her heart hammering as the men shouted after her. Her breaths came sharp, almost sobs. For a moment, she thought of stopping, of giving it all up. But then she saw the hospital envelope on the seat beside her, her husband's hospital bills inside. She gritted her teeth. "This isn't just about money," she whispered to herself. "It's survival." When she finally dropped off her passenger, her hands still shook. She sat in the car afterward, staring at her reflection in the dark window. Fear had followed her into the driver's seat, but so had something else, courage. The two wrestled inside her every night. And each time she chose to keep driving, courage won another round. At home, the weight of her choices began to show. Her little daughter, Ozioma, barely 5, clung to her each night. "Mummy, why are you always tired?" she asked with wide, innocent eyes. Cynthia forced a smile, brushing Ozioma's hair gently. "Because Mummy is strong, my Ozioma. Strong for you, for Daddy, and for the baby." But as Ozioma drifted to sleep, Cynthia sat awake, her body aching, her spirit stretched thin. Kalechi, from his hospital bed, carried his own torment. Each visit, he would stare at her swollen feet and whisper, "I should be the one out there, not you." His voice was filled with guilt, heavy like chains. Cynthia took his hand, pressing it against her belly. "We're a team, my husband. When you can't, I must. That's love." The room fell quiet. He blinked away tears, realizing that his wife had become more than his partner. She was his strength, his shield, his driver through the storm. Outside, the city still roared with chaos, but inside that hospital room, a fragile hope began to form. Weeks blurred into months. The hospital bills shrank slowly, one ride at a time. Cynthia built routines, drive, rest briefly, visit her husband, tuck Ozioma in, repeat. But doubt followed her like a shadow. Her belly was now round and impossible to hide. Some passengers gasped when they saw her. "Madam, are you serious? You're risking your child," one scolded. Others praised her grit, but every comment, good or bad, stayed with her long after the rides ended. At night, she rubbed her belly, whispering, "I know you feel this. Forgive me, but we must survive." The baby would kick in response, and she wondered if that was protest or encouragement. The city judged her. Some saw her as reckless. Others saw her as heroic. But Cynthia had stopped caring about labels. What mattered was keeping her family afloat. Still, a question haunted her. How long could she keep this up before something broke? One evening, her app pinged with a new ride. The passenger was a man in a crisp suit, carrying a briefcase. He slid into the back seat, silent, observing. His eyes seemed to study her every move. Cynthia drove carefully, sensing his gaze. Her palms sweated on the wheel. Finally, he spoke. "How long have you been doing this?" She hesitated, then answered softly, "Months." He glanced at her belly. "And you're carrying life, yet still carrying this job?" His tone was somewhere between admiration and disbelief. Cynthia stiffened. "I don't have a choice." The man nodded slowly, then handed her his card before stepping out. "Call me. My name is Mr. John. I think we might have something to discuss." Cynthia sat frozen, staring at the card. For weeks, her life had been about survival. But now, a door she didn't expect was beginning to open. The next day, curiosity wrestled with fear. Was this man serious? Or was it just empty talk? Eventually, she called the number on the card. "Come to my office tomorrow," Mr. John said. His voice was calm, deliberate. She almost didn't go, but something inside her, the same fire that had pushed her behind the wheel the first time, urged her forward. His office was cool and polished, a world away from her sweat-stained car. Papers and files were neatly stacked. Mr. John gestured for her to sit. "I watched you online," he began. "People talk about the woman who drives through rain and night, pregnant and fearless. That's discipline. That's resilience. We need that in our company." He laid documents before her. "We're expanding our logistics fleet. We need reliable partners. Start with one car, then more. You'll manage the drivers, the schedules, the operations. What do you say?" Cynthia's breath caught. It sounded impossible. Unreal. Yet the papers were real. His offer was real. Her heart pounded. For the first time, survival was shifting into opportunity. That night, Cynthia sat by her husband's bed, papers trembling in her hands. "They want me to run a fleet," she whispered. Her husband's eyes widened. He stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "Cynthia, you turned our struggle into hope." His voice cracked, tears filling his eyes. But doubt clawed at her chest. "What if I fail? What if I can't handle it?" He reached for her hand. "Cynthia, you've already proven you can handle what most people can't. If you could face this city alone at night, pregnant, then you can face anything." For the first time in months, she let herself believe it. Not fully, but enough. The day of the contract signing felt surreal. Cynthia walked into the office, her swollen belly leading the way, her head held high. Company representatives shook her hand. Cameras clicked. Papers were signed. It was official. Yet inside, her mind replayed the nights of fear, the insults, the exhaustion. The irony stung. The very struggle that nearly broke her had prepared her for this moment. She thought of her unborn child. She thought of Ozioma. She thought of husband. This wasn't just her victory. It was theirs. Still, beneath the pride, fear lingered. A contract was not the end. It was a beginning, and beginnings were always uncertain. On her way home after the signing, Ozioma sat beside her in the passenger seat, small hands gripping the dashboard with excitement. "Mummy, are we rich now?" she asked innocently. Cynthia laughed softly, her heart heavy and light all at once. "We're not rich, Ozioma. We're just beginning." Ozioma grinned, swinging her legs. "But now Daddy can come home soon, right?" Cynthia glanced at her daughter, then back at the road. "Yes, my Ozioma. Very soon." The city lights stretched before them, glowing like distant stars. For once, the road ahead didn't feel like survival. It felt like destiny. Word spread quickly. That woman, Cynthia, who drives taxis, she's not just a driver anymore. She's running fleets. Some praised her, calling her an inspiration. Others sneered, saying she got lucky. Envy bubbled in the voices of those who never imagined she would rise. Cynthia learned something important. People would always talk. The noise never ended, but the noise no longer mattered. Each insult became background music. Each compliment became fuel. She realized her power lay not in silencing voices, but in choosing what to hear. And she chose only the words that pushed her forward. In the hospital, her husband finally smiled without guilt. "When I get better, I'll join you," he said, hope returning to his eyes. Cynthia kissed his forehead gently. "No, love, you'll rest. I'll drive us forward." It wasn't rejection. It wasn't pride. It was love, shaped into steel. He nodded, his eyes shining. He had once been the driver. Now he understood. His wife was the engine carrying them all. The streets of Aka hadn't changed. The traffic was still chaotic, the horns still endless, the dangers still real. But Cynthia had changed. The woman who once trembled behind the wheel now drove with calm confidence. She wasn't just a driver anymore. She was a businesswoman, a leader, a fighter. Every honk, every glare, every late night ride reminded her of how far she had come. Each reminder hardened her resolve. The same streets that once tried to break her were now the streets she ruled. News of her journey spread beyond Anambra. Local blogs wrote about her. Social media buzzed. Headlines read, "Pregnant taxi driver signs fleet contract." Some saw her as hope. Others doubted her story. But no matter the opinions, one truth stood unshaken. Cynthia had rewritten her life. Not with luck, not with shortcuts, but with grit, sweat, and a steering wheel. Her car was more than a vehicle. It was her weapon, her shield, her bridge to tomorrow. At night, she often sat awake, staring at the ceiling. The baby kicked, Ozioma slept beside her, and her husband dozed in his hospital bed. She thought of the road behind her, the insults, the nights of fear, the close calls. She thought of the road ahead, contracts, fleets, challenges she couldn't yet see. For the first time, she didn't feel crushed by the weight of tomorrow. She felt ready. The road had shaped her. Now it would carry her. And so, Cynthia's story, the woman who turned hospital tragedy into a contract that could change generations, became more than her own. It became a reminder that sometimes the road we fear the most is the very one that leads us to our greatest destination. The hospital, the insults, the long nights, they were no longer scars. They were stepping stones. She had started as a wife desperate to pay bills. She became a driver fighting through danger. And now, she was a businesswoman, holding a contract that could change her family's future forever. Cynthia was no longer surviving. She was living, and her journey had only just begun. In the end, Cynthia's journey reminds us that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones fought quietly, in the dark, with no applause, yet they shape us into who we're meant to become. She didn't choose her struggle, but she chose to rise, and that choice changed everything for her family. But it leaves us with a deeper question. When life pushes you to the edge, do you retreat? Or do you drive forward into the unknown? If this story moved you, make sure you like, share, and subscribe because somewhere out there, someone needs this reminder of strength, courage, and hope.